Deadline day is over, and the Pacers were smart, but on the smallest possible level. They got 3 second-rounders, they got some cash, they got one interesting young player, but they had to give up some stuff to do it. Was this the right move for the Pacers? What does this allow them to do? What's next for this team? All coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, oh my God, it's February 10th. The trade deadline is over. I don't have to read the word rumors or report or speculation anymore for like 2 months. But still, that's 2 more months than I get for most of the year. It's exciting. But the Pacers did do some interesting things. We're going to talk about all of them today. Pacers make a deal with the Bucks. In theory, a 4-team trade. In reality, for the Pacers, more realistically, a 2-team trade. They get 3 players. They have to cut 3 players, but they also get 3 second-round picks, one of which is their own, which is good. They get some cash, which fans don't really care about, but whatever. Kind of a complicated trade, but an interesting one for the Pacers nonetheless. Joining me to talk about this trade is, of course, the multi-time guest, the man who's always here when I need him to talk about any Pacers thing. He's Derek Kramer from iPacersblog. Derek, before I let you talk, it's time for a take on this trade. At the smallest possible level of what you anticipated the Pacers' goals being entering this trade deadline, they have too many bigs. They got to get rid of a big. They need to get a power forward. They have to use their cap space to get assets. They did all 3 of those things. Granted, they did it in literally the least flashy, like smallest possible level, but they did them. And I think that is an interesting way to look at this is, yeah, they did all these things they were supposed to do, but they also did it at the smallest possible level.
Yeah, there's no like big game-changing, franchise-changing move coming from any of this. But they worked around the edges. I like how you put it. They met their some goals in the smallest possible way. They found some way to do that without giving up much. Sad to see some of those guys go. Terry Taylor, super fun player last year, didn't have the same impact this year for whatever reason. And then James Johnson, who's had a great locker room impact, and that'll be missed. And interesting to see what people say about that over the next couple days. But yeah, they did some things that are positives.
Sounds like they want to bring Johnson back. I tweeted that earlier today. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening. He's got to clear waivers, but look, everyone lauds the way he helps this team. We'll see what ultimately comes of that. For those who have not heard about it yet or read about it, there was a small, shorter podcast of instant reaction yesterday. In the end, here's what it in total was for the Pacers. The Pacers had to waive 3 players to get 3 players from the Bucks. So they waived Goga Bitadze, which was reportedly and discussed, I think, on this show and between us at a Pacers game, Derek, the most likely Pacer to be moved or waived at some point because he wasn't playing much. There's no opportunity for him here. They waived Terry Taylor on a minimum deal. It could have been expiring as a team option next year. So 2 young bigs there, and then waived James Johnson, their key veteran that everybody has talked highly of, to free up 3 roster spots. With those spots, they acquired Jordan Nwora, 24-year-old power forward from the Bucks. He can kind of play the 3 because he's skinnier. He can shoot it. Not as good inside the arc. Defense is okay. They acquired George Hill. If you are listening to this Locked On Pacers episode and you're a Pacers fan, you need no introduction to who George Hill is. His name on Twitter is still Indiana George Hill, which I find to be the most endearing thing ever. And Serge Ibaka, the veteran center, who's been on a couple championship-level teams in the past. The reporting from Shams Charania of The Athletic is that they will waive Serge Ibaka here in Indy. I think JMV reported it on 1075 as well in his afternoon slot. So that's the players that came into the Pacers. And then they get 3 draft picks. They get the better of Milwaukee's 2 picks in this coming draft, which is either Cleveland's, Golden State's, or Milwaukee's. I think it'll probably end up being Cleveland's based on how it's all structured, but it's confusing. They get the Bucks 2024 second-round pick unprotected, and the Pacers get their own 2025 second-round pick back unprotected. That's a big deal. You can now protect it or use it in swaps. And now I've been talking about what they got for a long time. They also got cash, and then they sent the draft rights to Juan Pablo Vaulet to the Nets to complete the circle. So to take it back to what I started with, the reporting was that they wanted a power forward. They get Nwora, who can be a power forward. I don't know if he'll play over Brissett. Brissett knows the system now. He's been playing a lot for them. He also can play the 3, but Duarte got minutes against the Heat and Brissett didn't. There's a lot of moving parts there. It sounds like they're going to keep George Hill. Scott Agnes said that in a reply to someone on Twitter. There's been no reporting about George Hill getting waived. And then who I don't know what his role would be. It seems like he'd just be a vet guy. Him and Miles Turner overlapped for a couple years, so they can. No, they didn't actually. Did they overlap for a year? I can't. They did. Yes.
2015, 16, right? Yeah.
They overlapped for a year, so there's some fun camaraderie there. And then Ibaka, we'll see. But so they get potentially 2 useful pieces: Hill and the locker room guy, and Nwora on the court for 3 guys that weren't playing, and they get good draft compensation. Like zooming out, that's pretty good. But then you also end the Terry Taylor growth experiment. The Batadze draft pick officially ends as a failure. No other way to put it. Right. So given what they had, I think they did well with a small move like this, but there's also some context required.
So we just skipped right over Juan Pablo. And I know everybody's like, who the hell is this guy? So just to give you some this is how the Pacers acquired his rights. They acquired his rights when they sent out Edmund Sumner to the Nets. So the Nets just reacquired the rights that they sent to the Pacers in the Edmund Sumner trade. Juan Pablo is a 2015 second-round draft pick, originally drafted by the Hornets in the second round. He will never come to the NBA, most likely. He averages 8.7 points in a Spanish league for Baxi Manresa, however you pronounce that. So that's who Juan Pablo is. He's literally just what they have to include in the trade, but I didn't want that to be glossed over.
Yeah, important distinction. I have no idea how much cash the Nets sent to the Pacers. I'm not sure that's been reported anywhere. If I had to guess, though, because the Pacers are waiving Ibaka, it might just be enough cash to cover his salary for the rest of the season. So that's just like a net nothing. That's a guess. I don't know. It could just be the minimum allowed cash to trade. Like they just had to swap things like technically legally, but the Nets didn't have to send. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So that's another factor here. So I think the place to start is Nwora. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but of the 3 guys coming in, sure, George Hill, there's the reunion factor. He has played a lot as a stretch. He's played some for the Bucks this year. He's interesting, but Nwora is 24. He was on their championship team as a rookie. They brought him back this offseason because they at least liked him somewhat. And his stats are interesting because you pointed this out before the show. This year, his 2-point percentage is actually lower than his 3-point percentage, but he can really shoot it. He has been about 40% 2 different seasons of his career, 38% just shy of that for his career. Actually, it takes about 3 a game. Is mobile enough, can handle the ball a bit, like isn't slow. Like that's an interesting piece to at least see what you have, especially on a Pacers team that quite frankly, loves to shoot, right? 43s a game comes up from this Pacers team very often. So there's a chance, especially with a passer like Haliburton, that he could end up being a decent fit on this team, but they'll have to see. Obviously he's a 24-year-old kind of unproven player, but that's not nothing. I think he's a plus value player to get in a trade like this.
Yeah, Jordan Nwora, interesting. Like, kind of if you look at his shot charts, very similar to O'Shea Brissett. Like, they're both. Nwora's a much better 3-point shooter, but if you look at their shots, they don't really shoot that well in the corners. They both shoot better above the break threes. Nwora's about 42%, so like very, very good above the break 3-point shooter, but then they don't finish very well at the rim. O'Shea gets to the rim more often than Nwora does, and Nwora has taken a lot more mid-range shots. He doesn't take them often, but like it's like 27-5 or something, the difference between the two. But Nwora doesn't hit those. It's basically if he takes a shot above the break, it's probably a good thing. If he takes something inside, you're probably not going to like the result. At least this season, from looking at his shot chart, and it's definitely like the Pacers just don't have any other like guys that are that body type. So it's just nice to get another forward that's young in the building and then see if you can kind of grow those guys as time goes on.
Yeah, his steal and block rates are both pretty good, which is generally encouraging statistical measure of like, this guy can read the game. It's like he's not lost completely out there, which is encouraging to me. Not encouraging is that despite hitting 39% of his threes this year, his true shooting percentage is 52% because he can't make twos. He very rarely gets to the foul line, and part of that is, again, the lack of twos. But he has to shoot pretty well to remain efficient, and that that can be fine. Good shooters will, again, fit well with what the Pacers do offensively right this second, but got to have a little more variation to change the way he's covered. But there is enough there as a base to say, there was a reason the Bucks re-signed him. Like, there's enough of a base here to say, yeah, this could be a rotation player someday, maybe even right now for a team building like the Pacers. And a lot of them impact metrics say he actually is a better defender than offensive player right this second, right? I don't know if I buy that, but it's close, right? And so I'll be interested to see what he can provide for the Pacers. I think he is the most interesting swing player here. Look, getting 3 seconds is certainly something. By the way, I have to make fun of fans. I hate doing this, but all these fans are saying, second round picks, what kind of value does that have? Did you see what happened today? Like, literally 40 second rounders got shipped around the league. James Wiseman went for 5 seconds. Not that he's any good, but like, you can get something interesting with seconds. Like, getting these is not nothing. And everyone is scoffing at them like they're nothing. I'm like, did you see what these did today? They literally changed the league landscape with second rounders. So yeah, they're certainly valuable for something, whether it's your own pick, like maybe it becomes Andrew Nembhard, or it becomes a trade piece in the future. And I can say maybe it becomes Andrew Nembhard, about a second round pick for forever and ever now, which is super lazy analysis. So I think of the players, that is definitely the most interesting one, is Nwora, right? Will he play? I right away, I mean, certainly not like his first game here, but maybe at some point they get him out there, see what he can be, see if he helps. And the other factor with him is he's under contract for next season as well. It's only one more year after this. It's not like the KP special where he gets these young guys under contract for a long time, but they have more time to explore what he is. They could, try to keep him around beyond that if they like him. And it's not like it's such a big deal that it's like, oh no, we cut into our cap space by this really tiny amount. So very low risk piece. And I wouldn't say high reward, because it's not like he's going to be amazing, but he's been good enough that it's certainly a worthy gamble for this team.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, just that I thought of as you were talking about, like, he does have the one more year on his contract, and the Pacers, like, they're light on roster spots in terms of guys that are already on contract, which you can move guys and all that, but they're already like, how many of these draft picks are they going to keep that they have?
Yep.
How much room for rookies do they have? O'Shea's contract runs out this year. Are they just going to be kind of forced to let him walk because there's no space to keep him around? So that is an interesting, like, if they plan to keep Nwora, like, what's the opportunity cost in terms of the roster space for next year? But something to consider there.
They added a second as well, right? They could have 5 picks now and less expiring contracts than before the trade. One certainty from their deadline, they're going to be a busy effing team in June and July. And they kind of have to be, because Tyrese Halliburton's about to be a billionaire. But, this trade does set the scene for, like, maybe if you want to go for it and consolidate 3 guys for one, oh, look, you have a bunch of assets to also make that happen. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying, if that was on the table, there's a lot of things they could end up doing. There's team options in there. They're whatever. You get the scene. Let's pivot and talk about some of the other aspects of this. The guys the Pacers waived, Ibaka, Hill, and stuff like that. Hey guys, one quick little break here so I could talk to you about Rocket Money. The average person has around 12 paid subscriptions. Think about that. If you think you're only subscribed to a handful of services, you might want to double check. With Rocket Money, you can quickly identify and cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, like a streaming service you bought to just watch one show on, or a free trial you never even used. Rocket Money quickly and easily identifies them and helps you stop paying for the ones you don't want. Simply find the subscription and press cancel. Rocket Money cancels it for you. No more long hold times. Super easy to use. Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving the average person up to $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day for your second listen. Oh, my goodness. Where do you start? There was a trade everywhere in the league. I got to say that Locked On Suns has to be the way to go. First and foremost, Kevin Durant's a Sun, and the Pacers play the Suns tonight. Kevin Durant's injured, so he won't be playing. In fact, who's going to be playing for the Suns at all is a mystery at this stage. But Brendan Clean will have everything you want to know about the new look Phoenix Suns. As for the Pacers, it sounds like, as Scott Agnes said, and per the fact that we haven't seen any report suggesting this, that George Hill is going to stick with this team, at least going forward a little bit. What this doesn't mean is he's for sure going to be on the team the rest of the season, right? Last year, they kept Tristan Thompson through the Halliburton Sabonis trade. He played, I can't remember, very few games, 3, 2, I don't know. And played very well in his final game. They beat the Wizards, and then they bought him out, and he signed with the Bulls over the All-Star break. So Hill sticking doesn't necessarily mean he'll stick the full season, but he could. I mean, he's 37 now. He could be close to retirement. He's from here. Perhaps he just sticks around and, does his indie thing. I have no idea. I'm totally guessing. I don't know what George Hill's future plans are, but if they do keep him at the bare minimum, he knows Miles Turner, he knows the franchise and some of the people involved in it, right? KP was GM under Larry when he was here for a while. He's a Sage vet. He's been on many teams that went to the finals with LeBron and with Giannis. So he knows the league well. He knows this franchise well enough that it's a good bet to have around at a bare minimum. Do you think he can provide anything on the court? Is there anything I'm missing there? What would you say besides the stuff that everybody already knows because of his first tenure about George Hill?
I think it's hard to say that George is gonna add a ton on the court this year. Right. I think he's fallen off a lot in the last couple of years with Milwaukee. I think when I looked at his stats the last couple of years, I think he's only hitting 31% of his threes, even. So I wouldn't count on him playing. I doubt that the Pacers plan on playing him a ton. You could say he could be a nice presence in case Halliburton and McConnell are both hurt again. That would be a nice extra point guard to have. More reliable than a Trevelyan Queen is going to be in that emergency point guard.
James Johnson was the emergency point guard for a game.
That's true. Yes, James Johnson played point guard. I would rather. I love James Johnson as a locker room guy. I don't want to see him as an emergency point guard again, though. But yeah, maybe we'll get the IMCU commercials for George Hill back. I think this was before your time covering the team, Tony, but he was just real robotic with his hands. It was like Ricky Bobby, he didn't know what to do with them during the commercial. And I would love to see them again. Bring me back the commercials.
Yeah, I mean, he's older than James Johnson. George Hill's pretty old at this stage of his career. He's not useless, but he's getting pretty close to the, you don't have much left in you. So again, good vet, whatever. And the Pacers learned the hard way last year what it's like when you have literally incapable point guards very often. Kiefer Sykes was huge for them because he was a huge step up from Brad Wanamaker. That was, the situation they found themselves in. And this year they have less of an expectation to win, although they have been going for it a little bit more recently. So just having a better emergency point guard is good, I suppose, compared to what they had before. But yeah, I like you. I mean, he's not even close to McConnell at this stage of his career. And if McConnell or Halliburton's hurt, they just turned to Nembhard as their backup one because they just drafted this kid and they love him. So I don't think Hill will play much at all. I mean, if he becomes a buyout guy, I don't know. Again, I don't know that he will or won't. There's a chance he plays 1-2 games with this team, but fine guy to have in this deal. And the way it sounded based on, first it was Sham saying they get Nwora and 2 seconds. And then it was Woj in a second tweet saying they get Hill and a second. It seems like they almost got one of the seconds to take George Hill's money, which helps Milwaukee's tax bill, presumably. I mean, and they also had to match salaries to get Jay Crowder in Milwaukee, but that even if he doesn't provide anything, netting them a second is still important. So I don't think George Hill will give the Pacers much, but again, still worth it for the asset gain.
I think he should just go blonde again and then see if that gets him some of his powers back.
Who else could they sign from that team reasonably?
Oh, wait, you know the answer to that.
Oh, yeah, crap. I do know.
It's Lance. He walked right into that one.
I did. I was hoping we could talk about
David West, he's not coming back. Roy Hibbert officially retired. He's in both of them are in the video at the beginning because they're actually retired. So
your one chance to talk about Chris Copeland, and you blew it.
He might be older than George Hill. He was really old when
he might be,
he might be 38 because he was old when he finally got his shot.
He was. Or Donald Sloan, man, a lot of names you could have gone with.
He's up. He's up.
He's up. Oh man, I wish he still did that Twitter thing. We have gone off topic. People don't know or care about this. The last player acquired. I can't believe I'm giving this guy more than a sentence of airtime here. Serge Ibaka. The Bucks didn't want him anymore. I think it was reported in early January they were working on finding a new home for him. He wasn't playing there at all. Shams Charania says they're going to waive him and step in the door. But trades become complete before they're like technically done because dudes have to do physicals in their new location. But once it's like fully done and all that's done, I'd imagine it does not take long for the Pacers to waive Serge Ibaka. There's no point of talking about what he can provide this team on or off the court because it sounds like he won't be around. I've heard they have interest in retaining James Johnson if he clears waivers. Perhaps that's how it goes is Johnson clears waivers, Ibaka gets cut, James Johnson comes back in. That's an educated prediction, guess, whatever. It's not like fait accompli that's going to happen. There is a waiver process and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, Ibaka's just kind of there. I mean, is there anything to even talk about with that?
No, I think like I saved the picture that they tweeted out, like welcome Serge Ibaka, just because Pacers legend. That's his legacy right there. Is that picture because that's all we're getting.
Did they do a welcome when they traded for Stauskas and Baldwin up with the Rockets in the deadline like 5 years ago now?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Those are always so funny. Like the Hawks had to do like a welcome Carmelo Anthony and they bought him out the next day. It's like, I get that they have to do this, but it always just, especially in a case like this where they do it for two other players. Like, if they're thinking about cutting him, they can't like admit it by not making him a graphic.
Right.
Let's pivot to the final stages here, which is the guys the Pacers cut and kind of their new look jive situation, whatever's going on to close this out. One more break here, guys, so I could talk to you about FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. That's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets. If your first bet doesn't win, FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown in the big game. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, anybody. Check it out. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Derek, what would you say was the second biggest trade of the day that people should hop on over and make their second listen at this juncture? There were a lot of fascinating ones.
Second one to KD. Oh man, that's. I mean, the Kyrie one's already been covered.
Yeah, that one was a few days ago. I mean, is the Russ one recent enough? Do any of Timberwolves, Jazz, or Lakers? I mean, they all. Yeah, actually, do the Jazz. See if David Locke can explain to you why the Jazz made that trade because I'm surprised how little they got in that deal for three pretty good players. Or do the Blazers because I'm kind of confused about what the Blazers did today. Mike Richmond, though, he is very good. And connected with that team. Okay, let's talk about the final strides of this. The Pacers had to cut 3 players to make this happen. If you want, and I will allow this because I've kind of viewed the trade this way, you can consider it as trading Goga, Taylor, Johnson for the 3 guys they got and 3 seconds, in which case the value looks just as good. The only actual difference is they have to pay the rest of the salaries of those 3 guys, the final 1/3 of it, because they just cut them instead of trading them away. Whatever. It's not our money. And anyway, look, cutting 3.5 years into your 18th overall pick 4 years ago, cutting him that hurts. I mean, as much as he hasn't been in the Pacers' plans and they needed to remove their glut of bigs, reserve bigs, cutting Bitadze kind of hurts, and his career did not pan out the way he or the Pacers, I think, wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Pritchard talking about him like right after he was picked, like he's ready to play right now, and well, he maybe he was. He didn't look like it when he got on the court, but he was only on the court for 5 minutes a game if he got that. He never had a shot in Indiana. I mean, you can say he had one, but he was behind Turner and Sabonis both for the first 2.5 years of his career. Played
Even
pretty well after the deadline.
Even behind like Jakar Sampson every so often.
Yep. So like he played well after the deadline when he had his like first opportunity for consistent minutes. And I think this year it was just like there's no point in playing him because we got Jalen Smith, he's under contract for longer. Isaiah Jackson's under contract for longer. So even if the Pacers thought that Goga was marginally better than either of those guys right now, there's no reason to keep playing him because he just has no future with the team at this point. So it's disappointing, especially you look back at that draft and it's another, maybe not as bad as the TJ Leaf and OG and John Collins, but Grant Williams and Brandon Clark were sitting right there and they would be very helpful for this team and would have been for the last few years.
Yeah, I think that look, I don't want to blow smoke up anybody, but like since the pick, right? It's easy to justify that he should have been behind both of Turbonis his whole tenure here. And then Isaiah was really good last year. They moved up stuff to get him. It made sense why they moved stuff up to get him. But the thought when they drafted him was like, eventually a Turbonis trade will come or minutes will come at the center spot. And it's justifiable why it never did, given that they were going for it. They tried changing coaches twice in there and all this stuff. But in theory, no one ever was like, oh, they need to make a move to get him minutes right during his career. No one ever thought that, I don't think. And so it's not like they made questionable moves at the center spot after picking him. The sin in retrospect was the pick itself. It was the wrong pick. And it telegraphed that they were going to do something that they never actually did at the center spot, which was open up minutes to try to develop him. And maybe they saw him in practice and said, no, he's not ready. We can't do that. But then again, you picked the wrong guy. It's pretty painful to cut a first. Maybe he is a guy that gets scooped up by another team. I mean, there were other teams with interest in him before the draft that year. I mean, clearly, though, if they could have gotten anything for him, they would have, right? They just cut him for literally nothing. So maybe another team scoops him up. I remember TJ Leaf after the Pacers. I guess the Pacers traded him and the Thunder cut him, but the Blazers scooped him up that year for his final season. So like even a guy like that, like if you get picked high enough and teams are interested in you before the draft, like someone will try to chase your potential. Perhaps that happens with Goga, but that's tough. I mean, that's tough for the Pacers draft record. Since 2020, they've done very well. Prior to 2020, not the best draft track record. That should not have been hard at all. The other painful cut-ish, Terry Taylor, who was really tremendous last year, some like eye-popping stats for a rookie, really, but their best offensive rebounder this year, even I would say. The problem is, like Goga, they didn't have center minutes to give him, and he's better as a center than a forward because he's a really good finisher at the basket, he's a good screener, he's a good offensive rebounder. All those skills require being at the rim. And they wanted to play him. They started him. Remember, Miles Turner got hurt on opening night. And they were like, all right, Terry Taylor, you were great in camp. Let's go start. They played him at the 4 and his 3's been fine in the G League. I get experimenting with that. His size certainly dictates he'd be better at the 4 than the 5, but he doesn't have enough on-ball skills or shooting skills to like totally blossom there. And the problem with playing with the 4 is not that that he doesn't have those skills. It's that it makes it harder for him to use his actually really good skills, right? It's harder to crash in from an offensive rebound when you're in the corner, when the shot goes up, and when you're not the screener, you can't be a good screener, right? So I get why they played him at the 4. They wanted him to succeed there, I think. That's why they started him there on opening night. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me. But in the end, the logjam kind of hurt him too, and they invested a little more into Smith and Jackson and just never had the minutes for him, which, again, certainly sucks after his promising rookie season. But again, I get it. And they had to cut 3 guys, and I can't really make an argument for anyone else over the 3 guys they cut. But in the case especially of Bitadze and Taylor, like, it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, Taylor's super fun. Like, he didn't have a great year with the Pacers this year. Like, he had a few nice games, but nothing compared to what he did last year. But he had that like a 40+ game in the G League. Like, that's not insignificant. Like, that was in the G League showcase.
I think Terry Taylor is definitely an NBA player. Definitely.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I agree. I was kind of hoping that one of those contending teams in this deal would take him and he'd find like a weird role on a contending team as like a minimum contract, but it's tough.
I am guessing a little bit here, but I mean, in theory, any of the 3 teams involved in this could have taken any of the Pacers 3 players. But with Taylor specifically, he's a minimum deal. Like, there were no salary matching requirements, but the 3 teams involved, again, I haven't heard this from anyone. This is just a guess knowing the cap rules. They're all in the tax. The Suns, Nets, and Bucks are all in the tax. So it's not like they just get a minimum player. It's like it costs them like $7 or $8 million. And that's not worth it for them to take a risk on these guys. So it's possible they get scooped up somewhere else. But I think that's kind of the reason that this is the path this all ended up going. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm rooting on. I'll be rooting on Terry Taylor like I do with all the random Pacers that mostly sat the bench, like Edmund Sumner. Glad that he's found a role and flourishing pretty well. And
he might play every game now.
Yeah, like he's awesome. I'm happy for Hype Train. One thing that I do think part of his thing, I think teams know who he is now. Like they respect the fact that he averaged 3 offensive rebounds in like 20 minutes a game last year. It's like I remember at one point this year, like he had, like you always see in the free throw line, like they put 2 bigs on the opposing big, and they were putting 2 guys on Terry Taylor to prevent the offensive rebound. And he wasn't even playing the 5 at the time. So like he's very respected for his offensive rebounding prowess, and like teams know who he is, which hopefully that means he gets a shot with somebody. If I guess the Pacers in theory could bring him back, but if you're saying they would like to bring James Johnson back, that seems less likely to happen.
Well, yeah, and look, if you're Terry Taylor, I don't know what he's thinking or what anything going on there is, but like he couldn't play here. Why would he be tripping over himself? Same with Goga. Like they couldn't get on the floor here. It's not like this is the best spot for them to chase money or opportunity. I mean, if it's the best offer they get, sure, but we'll see. Yeah, it's a bummer for both those guys. But again, like looking at their team, I mean, those are the most likely guys to get cut. Financially, impact wise, like it was going probably. If you told me to pick 3 before the day started, I would have probably landed on those 3 guys, and they're all expiring deals, right? No long-term implications there, which is of course certainly a factor. And yeah, with James, like I think they would like to bring him back. Good locker room impact. Like everybody who talks about James Johnson is like, oh man, he's the best. I love talking to that guy. Like Dustin Dopirak and I have joked that we would start a business where he just like calls us every morning to gas us up. Which if he wants to do that in retirement, go for it, James Johnson. So we've talked for 30 minutes about this trip, which I think is impressive because look, it is a move on the margin, certainly, but this is what you do when you have whatever 8, 10, if they cut Stevenson's cap hold, whatever. When you have cap space, I mean, I guess they probably had to do all 10, whatever. When you have cap space, you use it to get stuff. And they did that. They used their cap space to get 3 extra second rounders, which were proven to be helpful this season. They get to take a flyer on Jordan Nwora. They get a good locker room piece in George Hill. And again, it sucks to have to waive 2 guys, but they weren't playing for you, right? You can get more value elsewhere from the players potentially. And so I think in that way, the Pacers are using their roster spots with about the same value, maybe a little more, and they picked up cash and picks along the way. I mean, it's hard for that not to be a good trade, even if it is very like low level.
Yeah, I think with reasonable expectations, like this was probably about what you should have expected at this deadline. Like unless they were going to give up a ton for somebody, which it looks like the Raptors decided like we're just going to go for it this year. We're going to try to be good. We're going to get Jakob Poeltl and see what happens. So
yeah, none of the guys that everybody was like they should go for this guy. None of them were even available. It sounds like when it came down to it.
John Collins didn't get moved. OG Anunoby didn't get moved. So their prices were likely very high if they were available at all. So it's kind of is what it is. You might have hoped that maybe Daniel Tice would get moved. We can all riot if he continues to play in the rotation today against
that would be odd to me.
So we'll see what happens with that. But he has years left on his deal. The Celtics couldn't reacquire him again because, as you reminded me and ruined my jokes today on Twitter, that since they traded him this league year, they can't reacquire him this season through a trade. I assume they can, if they waived him, they could re-sign him. Is that correct?
I think that I can hear myself echo for some reason, but I think that if they had cut him, they couldn't have signed him. But if they traded him somewhere else and then that team cut him, then they could have. Right? Remember that happened with the Andrew Bogut thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is super stupid.
Yeah.
Fans.
So the Celtics settled for a different.
Muscala's good. They had a good day.
Yes.
Good day.
That was a nice pickup for them. They couldn't get their preferred option of Daniel Tice. I'm sure that's who they really wanted.
Yep.
But
So the two guys that in theory I saw linked to the Pacers that got actually traded were actually traded in the same trade. And that's Matisse Thybulle, who went to Portland. It sounds like he went actually I don't really know the whole structure of that deal, but Portland gave up a couple seconds to get him, and then Jalen McDaniels went to the Sixers, who got under the tax by trading Thybulle for McDaniels. Or I forget how the exchange went. I think it's like a good second for McDaniels, and then maybe it was, I can't remember what the Thybulle price was, but stuff that it's like, okay, you know what, at that price, whatever. If you don't get him, you don't get him. It's not like you're kicking yourself for it.
Yeah, like McDaniels would have been nice, but he's hitting free agency, and who knows how much that a wing with like his abilities and size is going to get paid this summer.
Right.
That would have, like, there's some players that would have been nice, but it didn't happen. And I guess another one that there were reports that the Pacers were interested in Obi Toppin, but apparently the price was too high for that too. So you don't want to give up too much for one of these, but kind of is what it is.
For Thybulle, the Portland gave up Svi Mikhailuk, a second-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. Sorry, Svi Mikhailuk and 2 second-round picks. And then for McDaniels, the Sixers gave up, obviously, Thybulle, as well as 2 seconds themselves. So pretty high prices. I mean, the Pacers technically got that much from other teams in their deal with the Bucks. But, you're fine with not giving up stuff at that stage. Like, I kind of thought for Thybulle it'd be like almost a dump for nothing. McDaniels is interesting, but again, an expiring contract. So, like, I get it. If they had done it at that price, I also would have got it. But, like, I get why they didn't. So in the end, minor stuff for the Pacers. They did kind of address their roster imbalances as it stands. Like, it seems like everybody who wouldn't get minutes would know now heading into this, except for maybe, I guess, you got to figure out what Nwora situation is. But other than that, I think it was, if I gave the Pacers a grade for the day, maybe this should be its own show, I would probably give them a B. What would you do?
Yeah, B minus. That's where I would agree. I think an important thing, like if you mentioned that, if you're really disappointed the Pacers didn't get Thybulle or McDaniels in this, like, but you also think that second round picks are worthless. Remember, that's what they cost. So the Pacers got some picks. They could make one of these kind of moves in the future. They just didn't make this time.
Yeah, 3 seconds gets you like decent players these days. So or if you get cap caught, like 3 seconds got the Pelicans and to save their butts, like they're gonna duck the tax next year and get off of Graham, and Josh Richardson can kind of play. So interesting trade deadline day. There's a million things you can read and watch about every trade in the league. We'll of course be covering this into the weekend. I don't know if Nwora plays this weekend, I might do an extra show, maybe a short one over the weekend. If not, come Monday, we'll talk about any new look Pacer stuff we learn about this team in the deadline. And of course, the other moves that I think impact the Pacers. Obviously, got to get to the KD one because TJ Warren is involved and the Pacers are technically in it. But 2, because anything that seismic is going to change the whole league. He has a couple other moves. Derek, you have anything else on deadline day?
I just can't believe you aren't planning to do 30 minutes on Juan Pablo. I mean, you once wrote an article on Trey McKinney-Jones, who I think played 10 seconds one season. Just up your game back up, Tony. Come on.
Derek, I have a question for you. Is 10 seconds more or less than 0 seconds?
He was a draft pick in 2015. Did Trey McKinney-Jones get drafted? I don't think so.
He was a top 40 pick, by the way. Like that should be a guy you would play for you at some point. What?
Number 39, right?
Yeah. And speaking of draft rights, I mean, the Pacers have too many picks. Like they could, in theory, be a draft and stash team this coming year. You can always use draft rights. Like, this is why they're helpful. People are always like, what's the point of this? This today is why those matter. If you have any questions about this stuff, because I understand that this is kind of complicated and weird that they waive 3 players and get 3 players and might waive one of the guys they get and then re-sign one of the guys they cut. They also get stuff, and it's weird. I'll try to answer them on Twitter at TEastNBA. Derek can answer them for you too, except don't bother him as much as me. He's on Twitter at iPacersblog. Be back Monday or over the weekend again if anything noteworthy happens there. Talking more trade deadline stuff, where the league's headed, where the Pacers are headed. Till then, everybody have a fantastic weekend.